Now, uh, let's introduce Miss Lisa Bernucci. Lisa, I'm curious to know, if I were to answer that question, I would say, which characteristics describes a growth mindset? I would say challenges are opportunities to grow. But what's the answer?
But
We
you
all
would
want to
be
know.
right. You would be correct. It is one of the characteristics of a growth mindset, but actually all of the above is the answer we're looking for. And so before we get started today, I really want you guys to imagine that. Imagine how this school year would be different for your child if they knew that their skills could be developed through hard work, and if they did see each challenge as an opportunity to grow, and if mistakes were something to learn from and not be judged by, what a difference that school year would look like, and how much more fulfilling it might feel for your child and for your student. So it's that time of year, back to school. I don't know about you, but I'm ready to send them back. But I want to make sure I'm sending them back with all of the school supplies and tools that they need. And this is why it's perfect right now as we're getting ready to send them back to their teachers and their classrooms to talk about growth mindset and why it is the most important thing that we're sending them off to school with this year. So today's agenda, we're going to talk about what is a mindset, particularly what is a fixed mindset and what is a growth mindset. We're going to talk about why a growth mindset is important, why it's the most important thing we're sending them to school with. We're going to talk about how to change your mindset. Maybe as we're talking today, you realize, I'm not as growth mindset as I want to be. We're going to give you some tools and strategies for how to change that. And last but not least, some strategies for fostering a growth mindset in your child. So I could not be more excited to introduce today's guest. We have Dr. Martha Shinn with us today, and she is a clinical child psychologist and research assistant, and the research part of that is why she's so perfect for today's expert speaker. She understands the importance of research, and with over 40 years of research, Dr. Carol Dweck has a plethora of information that Dr. Shinn has researched and pulled from, and so she's got all of this great information to share with us today, and I'm very excited to have her here with us this morning.
Thank you, Lisa. I'm so excited to be here as well, and as you said, share my experience as a clinical child psychologist and research scientist, and also talk about Dr. Dweck's over 40 years of research. So it's exciting to be here at Holstrom and to partner with you guys on this webinar, and I'm super excited to share all these this great information with the families and educators that are joining us live or who will watch this later, because we're all gearing up for back to school, and this is a perfect topic. All right. So with that, I'd like to start simply by first defining what a mindset is. And a mindset is a set of beliefs or a way of thinking that determines your behavior and your outlook and your mental attitude. So that mindset is basically the posture with which you approach tasks. And that's what a mindset is in terms of defining it. If we look ahead onto our next slide, we'll see that there I have one of my favorite quotes from Dr. Dweck. It says, if parents want to give their children a gift, the best thing they can do is to teach their children to first love challenges, be intrigued by mistakes, enjoy effort, and keep on learning. That way, their children don't have to be slaves to praise. They will have a lifelong way to build and repair their own confidence. The reason that I really love that quote is because it highlights the growth mindset in her words. It talks about things that are sort of counterintuitive to what we think is necessary for growth. What's necessary for growth, according to all her research, is to teach our kids to love those challenges, enjoy those mistakes, enjoy the effort, and that is what results in learning. So that's what's really great about that quote.
Yes, I love this quote too, and I do feel that there's so much in here. So just, if anything, remember this at the end of the webinar. Remember that this is really what we're looking to teach our children, because these are the skills that are going to help them be successful in life.
Very true. So on this next slide, you'll see that we're comparing that fixed mindset to the growth mindset. So we're not going to read this to you, but I just want to point out some key things to you. So if we're looking at the area of skills, a fixed mindset says skills are something that you're born with. They're sort of fixed, and you have the skills or talents that you have. Whereas a growth mindset says, hey, skills are something that are developed with hard work, and you can improve upon these. So see how that's different, right? So now let's look at things like challenges, or even better, setbacks, because setbacks are typical to the human experience. If you have a fixed mindset and you experience a setback, you may tend to blame others or to feel discouraged, right? But if you teach your child to have a growth mindset, it increases awareness. It wakes them up to understanding what went wrong and what they can change. And so that's really why changing the fixed mindset to the growth mindset is so important. So what happens exactly with a fixed mindset, and what's the outcome of it? Digging a little bit deeper, that fixed mindset can potentially sabotage achievement, and specifically academic achievement. It can take away the joy of learning that children have if they have a fixed mindset, and it could reduce their feelings of well-being. So how positive they feel about things. Whereas on the next slide, we'll see how a growth mindset is completely contrasted to that. A growth mindset academically ends in a totally different direction. So it starts with, I can get smarter. How do I get smarter? Learning is my goal. Effort makes me stronger. I'll spend more time and work harder on something. Having those attitudes is what results in higher achievement. So what happens when you adopt a growth mindset? It changes your attitude, as I've said. How it changes your attitude is that challenges are viewed as opportunities instead of as a roadblock. And school or learning is perceived more as exciting, like, hey, this is an opportunity that I have to really practice my growth mindset, to practice the effort skills or the skills for growing that my parents or my teachers have been teaching me. And then the growth mindset, I think, positions your brain into a positive orientation. You know, that's the right posture for learning, Lisa. We want to have that right posture for learning, and that's really why that growth mindset is important. And lastly, you'll see on there that the growth mindset really also positions our children for a positive emotional state, not just the posture for learning, but having a healthy emotional state. And as a psychologist, I think that's really important, because learning is not just about learning facts, it's about experiencing the information and attaching affect to it, and that's really what solidifies learning. So if we can have the right growth mindset, it will position our attitude correctly all the way around.
Right.
So parents may be wondering, well, okay, I'm convinced, Dr. Shinn, my child needs a growth mindset. I'm going to pack that with my back to school supplies, but what exactly are some strategies for fostering that growth mindset in my child? And so in the next group of slides, we're going to talk exactly about that, how to do that. And so some of these slides have questions for you to ponder so that you can ask yourself, if I have this, how do I continue to do that? And if I notice that I don't have this attribute about myself, that's what you need to work on fostering. So our first one is, how does your mindset measure up? So this is a question to get you as the educator, you as the parent, to think about your own personal mindset so that you can model that for the children in your life. So for yourself, when you do something well, what do you attribute your success to? Do you attribute it to the fact that you're smart, that you're lucky, that you're talented, or do you attribute it to your hard work? So that's one group of questions that's important to sort of self-ask and answer for yourself. Then if you have success, are you the sort of person, not only do you attribute it to luck or smarts, but do you sometimes attribute it to something outside of yourself, like another person altogether? And then if you struggle with a task, ask yourself, why am I struggling with the task, and what do I attribute that struggle to? Is it that I'm not smart enough, or is it that I need to figure out how to put forth more strategic effort?
I think these are really important questions to ponder, and I know it's maybe not a natural instinct to ask ourselves these questions, But particularly when things are not going our way, I think that's when it's most important to ask these questions, because it gives some insight into where we might be creating a roadblock for ourselves. And so I love this slide.
Yeah, and children learn from what they see us do, not simply by what we say. So being mindful of our mindset and what mindset we're modeling is really important, which transitions us into our next point, and the next strategy that you want to consider is, what's the mindset message that you're sending? Because what you do and what you say sends a mindset message to the child that you're helping or that you're raising. So are your attitudes sending a growth mindset to your children? That's an important question to ask yourself. If you find yourself answering no to that, then that's an indicator that you want to begin to change from that fixed mindset to that growth mindset, because you can change that. You can change that by beginning to model persistence and increased effort or more targeted effort in the face of challenges. And you see on the right side of your screen that we have sort of like a nice visual for you guys to consider about how mindset is connected to thoughts and feelings. And so you see there that at the very top it talks about how your thoughts or your mindset can lead to good feelings and can lead to good or positive behavior. So these things are interconnected, your thoughts and feelings and behavior, and it begins with a positive mindset or that growth mindset.
One example that comes to my mind in thinking about how our attitudes are reflecting a mindset and our kids are seeing that is, oftentimes when I'm struggling with any sort of technology, be it my phone, the DVR, whatever, my kids are very used to hearing me say, I can't do it, go ask dad, can you do it for me? And I realized pretty early on that I needed to show them that I was willing to kind of put in the work and learn it too, and that I actually thought and believed that it was something that I was capable of learning. And much to everyone's happiness, I can actually take care of a lot of these things myself now, but it's, it starts off as something funny, or people just assume, that's what you're kind of labeled as. Oh, mom's not good at that technology stuff. And then from there to really say, you know what, I'm not yet, and we're going to talk about yet coming up, but I can be, and I'm going to try. And so they see that. And so that example came to mind. I was going to throw myself out there and share that with you guys.
Yeah, that's a great example of a parent mindset message. So thank you for being candid with us and sharing how you encounter that in your life. And I want to show you a little bit, Lisa, about how you can change that. And so in our next slide, let's take the example that you talked about with being quote unquote technologically challenged. And that's a term that we hear people say, like, oh, I'm just technologically challenged. So changing the words for how you express yourself and how do you model that mindset for your children makes a big difference. So let's take an example of something like, I just can't do this, like you said, or I don't understand. A better growth mindset question might be, what am I missing? Because if you know what you're missing, like you found, then you know what to change, right? Or, oh, I give up. Changing that I give up to, I'll use some of the strategies I've learned. Why? Maybe because you've invested the time in listening or watching someone else show you how to do a tech approach, and then you implement it. So these are just, these are just words, but they make a big difference in changing the mindset.
Absolutely.
Okay, so moving on to our next strategy, the next thing you guys want to be mindful of as parents and educators is to teach your children that brains grow. So I think this slide is best encapsulated by the picture that we have there. That illustration shows a brain weightlifting, and we all understand, that weightlifting, I'm a weightlifter also actually, we understand that weightlifting grows muscles, but we don't often automatically think of our brain as having increased muscular strength with practice and rehearsals. And it is true for our brains, just like it is for any other muscle in our body, that the brain is trainable and that it's a muscle that grows with effort and activity. And so just knowing that and then teaching that to your children so that they know that the new academic year, that the new school year is a new opportunity for a growth spurt, a brain growth spurt specifically.
I love that. I love the growth spurt. I mean, it's a clear picture of exactly that growth that's going to happen in a very small measured window, and you can see it. You put the little pencil mark on the wall, and then you got the next pencil marks. So I love that. I love that word.
Yeah, and it's not something that happens instantaneously, just like going to the gym doesn't make you muscular because you went one time. It's that repeated effort. The repeated effort is what promotes growth. And so that is really what we want to drive home to you guys, that you understand that repeated effort is what drives growth. And then the last point I wanted to make on teaching your children that brains grow is that you all may be wondering, well, what if my child has a difference in learning? How does the growth mindset apply to them? It does apply to them. And the way that the growth mindset applies is we're not saying effort alone is what produces growth, but targeted effort. So if your child has a learning difference or an attentional difficulty, the effort that they put in has to be very targeted to their style of learning. And so what will be important for that child is to identify what exactly are the strategies that will help them learn more efficiently so that they too can use those strategies to promote their growth mindset. All right, now moving on to our next strategy is giving appropriate praise. So praise is just another word for a compliment or a reward using our words. And there's a right way to praise and there's a way to praise that's less helpful and sometimes can actually be detrimental. So I have some examples here, and these examples are really oriented to the growth mindset. So when you're wanting to promote a growth mindset, you don't want to praise things that relate to the child's intelligence or abilities, because it sort of says, hey, these things are fixed. Your intelligence or your abilities are fixed. So you don't want to say, oh, you did it, you're so smart, because that doesn't really encourage the child to then recognize that, wait a second, that's really not the max of their potential. This is just sort of a baseline of today. Whereas the growth mindset praise is going to say something like, I like the way that you're being consistent or being persistent at trying that in different ways. That really reinforces the child's effort to continue to do it, their ability to think flexibly, to consider alternatives. That is really the type of thing that you want to praise. So when thinking about praising, don't just praise these smarts or ability attributes that are present in your child, but think about the process of their learning and praise the steps in the process, because that will keep them engaged in the process of learning. And that's exactly what we want with back to school.
And hopefully they will be less likely to give up if it does get challenging, because we're not just waiting for them to be done to say, good job. We're actually watching the process and telling them each step of the way that we recognize the work and the effort that they're putting into it.
Yeah, I think that's such a great point, Lisa, because oftentimes as educators, as parents, we're mindful of the end goal, which is important, but we may have a missed opportunity to support children in those intermediary goals, because we understand as adults that goals have short-term objectives and long-term objectives, but children are learning that. So to the degree that we as educators and parents can reinforce that with our praises, that's going to support their persistence and their ability to endure through challenging tasks instead of giving up. All right, so our next strategy is for you as educators and teachers and parents to share resiliency role models. So with this one, I want to share a little bit about, well, what exactly is resiliency? We know what a role model is, but what's resiliency? I love the definition of resiliency because in its most basic definition, it's the ability to bounce back from adversity, to spring back to original form. And that's what we want children to be able to do, to encounter a challenge, to understand how to tackle the challenge, and then to spring back into feeling good about their abilities and their competence to achieve. And so how do you do that with your children? How do you model for them or share with them resiliency models. So some of them one way can be by sharing famous underdogs. So one example is someone like Walt Disney. Walt Disney is a person who we all know, looking at the Disney company, that they're highly successful. But the man himself actually went bankrupt before he built a successful empire. And if you read his biography, you'll find out that he put in many years of consistent effort to really developing his approach and fine-tuning it, and encountered lots of failures before he became the successful person that we associate with his name. And so sharing those type of famous role models is one way to do it. Or, as you see in our second point, sharing a relative or a friend that it has a meaningful and personal connection to your child, and letting them know or sharing with them how that person was able to encounter challenges and overcome them by having a growth mindset. And why you want to do this is because having a model is what inspires children to recognize that they too can do this. Otherwise, all they see is the end result, and they don't see that these successful people in their life, on media and in their personal life, actually arrived there as a result of lots of effort and hard work, not instantaneously. And I really want to emphasize that, Lisa, because we live in an instantaneous society where everything is at our disposal, and we think that, you know, everything is just a click away. But children don't understand that those clicks are made easy by a lot of background engineers, by a lot of background people who are putting who are working together in collaborating on making sure that our technology is smoothly integrated, that things are just a click away. But they didn't start that way. And so I think to the degree that parents can really share that with their children, then their children will really understand that effort is key and that things are not instant. And that is really what will put them in that posture of growth.
One of the courses that we offer, I just want to mention this really quick, because when you're talking about role models, our Mind Shift, the Science of Learning course, pretty early on in one of the first few chapters talks about resiliency role models and highlights a few famous people that have in fact overcome some big challenges and obstacles to be, you know, now today, very successful people who, you know, made it through that, who persevered, who kind of decided to push through and not quit. And I love that students have the opportunity to really recognize that there are people out there that they can look up to. And, you know, things are not easy for everyone. So I love that. I love having a resiliency role model. And I know sometimes with kids, a role model is key. So that's great.
Absolutely. So our next strategy is for parents and teachers to teach affirming language. So what exactly is affirming language? And we're going to share some example, but one of the key ways, if I had to say, how do I teach the growth mindset in one word, it's the word yet. Teach your children and empower them with the word yet. Adding a simple yet to it takes away the period and puts a comma there. And that is really what we want children to see, that the challenge is followed by a comma and then a strategy for them to grow. And so I want to show you guys some examples of what that looks like. And so those include things like, to affirm that growth mindset, we see on the left side that it says, the fixed mindset would say, this is too hard. The growth mindset will say something like, this may take some time and effort, or this is challenging now, or I don't know how to do this yet, using our yet word, and follow that with a comma to say, okay, it'll take some time and effort, but I can get it done. And then one of my favorite ones, just because we all use this term, plan A didn't work, because we all have a plan A, which we say that's the best plan, and it may well be, and it may be the plan that leads to success. But if plan A didn't work, put a yet after it and say, good thing the alphabet has 25 more letters. That really says that there are multiple opportunities that we can take advantage of to achieve success, and that plan A not working is not the end. Plan A not working is simply a point of recognizing that now we have other plans that we can consider and attempt.
Yeah, and for those of you who are watching us on the screen, you may have noticed the poster right behind Dr. Shinn. And we have several growth mindset posters throughout our campuses, and this particular one is one of my favorites. And, you know, to not worry about failure, because worry about all of those chances that you're missing when you don't even try. And so that kind of call to action, to see it as an opportunity, to take that plan A and say, you know what, good thing there's 25 more letters that I can choose from. So I think that's spot on.
Yeah, and it goes together, that not worrying about failure. It's not that failure is not disappointing. So I don't want to minimize the genuine emotion that we as individuals may have when we attempt something and it wasn't initially successful like we thought it would be. But that if the growth mindset tells us that when we have a failure, that's not the end, it's the beginning of recognizing that we have more chances, more opportunities to try again and then achieve success. Mm-hmm. And that's really reinforcing that concept of effort. Yeah.
Who better to close us out than Thomas Edison, right?
Yeah.
So speaking of resiliency role models, you know, this gentleman did not figure out that light bulb and electricity in one shot. And I love this quote from him. I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work. And awesome. I love it. I love the way it's phrased. And Dr. Shinn and I were talking about the light bulb, and how it's kind of a perfect little association.
Yeah, you know, the light bulb is an image now that has become synonymous with the growth mindset, which we like, and I'll explain to you why in a second. But for the longest, people think of the light bulb as like, whoop, it's a bright idea, as if it's one moment in time. And if we look at the life of Thomas Edison and actually how the development of the light bulb took place, we learned that he had about 30 plus assistants in his labs, that he had a well-funded lab, it was well-resourced, and he had a team of people that were working collectively on the development of this innovation. And the culmination of it was the light bulb. So it wasn't one moment in time, it was a culmination of a lot of people's effort that resulted in what we now know to be the light bulb. And so the same thing with developing your child's growth mindset. It really is going to take not just your child's effort, but it's going to take educators' effort, it's going to take parents' effort, it's going to take strategic effort to think about appropriate and effective strategies for supporting their learning. And it does, just like it took Thomas Edison, a team to make that one spark of innovation that now we think is just someone hit the switch and turned the light on. Yeah, no one hit the switch and turned the light on. It was an entire team. In the same way, we are a team of educators and parents who collectively promote our children's growth mindset and collectively promote their growth academically and in other areas of life.
Fantastic. Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Dr. Shinn.
Thank you, Lisa.
So we saved some time. I know we probably are getting a lot of questions. I know Nelson's already messaged me saying we have several coming in. So Nelson, what's the first question you'd like to throw in our direction?
Yeah. Well, real quick, a reminder, it's not too late to submit a question. You know, there's a question box on the side. And again, if we don't get to the question during the webinar, we'll be following up with you after the webinar. You know, I guess we're getting a lot of questions on parenting. And look, I've got 5 kids. And I could sit here and beat myself up and say, oh my God, I didn't use the word yet a whole lot of times, you know? And I guess you gave us a few tips and tricks on what we can do to kind of reinforce this growth mindset thing. But as a parent, what other resources do I have? Is there a particular book I can read or a class I take? I'm not sure. You know, I want to get better. All parents want to get better, and we want to see our kids succeed. So do you have a recommendation in terms of what I can do as a parent to learn more about this?
That's a great question, and thank you for sharing about your children, and that's exactly what we want to hear, that someone was able to hear the growth mindset content that we have in this webinar, and then that sparked their interest in learning, how do I do this more? And if you're not using the word yet, start using the word yet. If you'd like to read something about it, we're going to make this webinar and all the slides available to you guys afterward. If you'd like to read Dr. Dweck's original work, she has a book named Mindset, and in there's a chapter specifically for educators and parents, and it's a great chapter. It's a great read. The entire book is a great read, but that particular chapter is targeted to parents for additional reading. So I think you would enjoy that.
Right, and I want to add real quick, this isn't, for me, working in education and working with parents and kids, it's definitely not the first time that a parent has said, well, how do I do it? What do I do? And that was part of the reason, we sat down and figured out that not only do our kids need to be taking a growth mindset course, but parents should have access to that as well. So whether you're, a full-time student at Hallstrom, or whether you're, you got invited by your friend, I encourage you to even just ask us some more questions about what that parent course entails and what it encompasses, and how it might be able to even just give you some pointers, because it's a quick course, it's pretty painless, and you come out of it with a wealth of knowledge.
Okay, so I just heard Hallstrom Academy has a course for parents. Did I just hear that?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Our Mindshift, the Science of Learning course does have a parent component. Okay. And the parents are raving about it a little bit more than the kids, although the kids are also enjoying it because the parents do have that resource available to them, and we've been getting some great feedback.
Yeah. Okay. I also, Nelson, wanted to add as an additional resource that we see parents at Variation Psychology and support them one-on-one with their children as well in developing growth mindset. So if there's a parent out there and you want to seek support specifically for yourself and your family on how to do that, especially if you are aware of challenges that they already have and you need support with overcoming those, we'd be happy to connect with you. On the last slide, we have our contact information, and attached to the webinar, we have a referral form where parents can self-refer to us, or providers or educators that are on the call can refer families to us as well.
Yes, good reminder.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we have a question here that goes back to the examples of how you praise the efforts and process, right? Can you provide more examples? And the second part of this question is, what if their process was not successful?
Oh, that's great. If the process was not successful, that's exactly what we're talking about. We don't expect the process to be always result in success. The process and failing at steps in the process are learning moments to recognize what about the teaching strategy was helpful to the student, and what about the teaching strategy was not helpful, and then using that to change or modify the teaching approach so that then you can develop a new teaching process and then reinforce that. And just because the process didn't work initially, that's exactly what the growth mindset is to help you say, I'm not doing this process one time for the sake of it working the first time. I'm doing it to discover, to experiment if this is the approach for me, if this is the approach that leads for success. So that experimental approach is the shift that we want parents and educators to have. And if children understand that something is an experiment, and that I'm going to experiment if this is what results in success, then they're more open to experimenting with another approach. That's a great question.
Okay. Now, obviously, you were mentioning it takes a village, right? So this one question is about, it says here, I feel like I have a growth mindset, but my spouse does not. So I'm open to supporting the process and praising the effort, but my spouse is all about the final results, which in this case, right, is all about grades and report card. So is there something that we can do to get on the same page?
Yeah, I think, that's common. We don't all grow at the same pace, just like flowers in a garden don't grow at the same pace. So if you and your spouse are growing in your growth mindset at different stages, that's okay. The important thing is to do what you're doing now. Today you planted a seed, and if you keep watering it, it's going to grow. If you share this webinar with your spouse, this has the opportunity to help grow that growth mindset in them as well. So I would just see this webinar as a starting point and not worry about the fact that you and your spouse don't have the same original mindset, but work together on building that and developing that as a parenting team or as an educator team.
Okay, I guess I have a follow-up question because, it's very easy to say, yo, I love this, right? I'm going to study up on it. And you get carried away to the point where you make it unattractive for others, right? Is there like a formula to ease into it, right? Where my kid is looking at me and all of a sudden, I'm using the word "yet" every two seconds, right? And they're looking at me like, what's up with Daddy? He's off it today.
He's yet happy.
Yeah, he's yet happy. He can't make a decision. He can't put a period on things. Yes, I would say pick something, a task that you want to start practicing it for. And I wouldn't start with the most challenging task that your child is confronting right now. I would start with something that you know that they already are interested in and have some measure of success. So it gives you a natural space to begin to practice it. So for example, if your child really enjoys cooking, or they enjoy learning recipes and school's out still and they like making sandwiches and learning how to and helping you with different things in the kitchen or around the house, and that is still a little bit challenging for them based on their age, that's a good place to start practicing your yet and teaching them skills, because you're skilled at it already, you have your recipes down, and that's an opportunity for you to teach them something and for them to see that, okay, yet they can't cook like you, or yet they can't do this household task like you, but these are some steps that they can take and that you're going to join them in rehearsing it. So you don't want to be practicing your yets all day, all night. It's good to generalize and to think about how you could use it in real life, but you want to start small. You don't want to overwhelm yourself or beat yourself up as a parent because you're not using the growth mindset in every opportunity, but use it in a place that's natural to you and start practicing it there and then grow it.
All right. Now, let's go to the topic of positive role models, right? And so it says here, my son doesn't have very positive role models. If anything, he's dependent on his friends, right? And so they emulate each other's behavior. So this growth mindset thing may not necessarily come through as being cool. So do you have any suggestions on how to get, the kid on board?
Well, I'm glad you used the word cool. I was sharing with Lisa when we were talking about adolescence and sort of the goals of adolescence. And one of the goals that all adolescents have is, I want to avoid embarrassment at all costs, right? And I want to be cool. So I want to translate that to adult words. That means I want to avoid rejection and I want to gain acceptance of others. And one key way to gain the acceptance of your peers is by experiencing success. So teaching your children that growth mindset will position them to be the cool person in their group and for them to be a model and a leader instead of a follower. Because what you described in that question was, what if my child's a follower and they follow these other children that may be engaged in some problematic behaviors that I don't want my child imitating? Yes, of course, you can do your part from a parenting standpoint to be selective about your child's peer groups in the areas that you can, but we can't always do that as parents. Children are going to encounter peers at community events, at school, at church. They're going to encounter their same age peers in different settings, so we can't protect them from being in those environments. It's good for them to be around those people, but it's better for them to know how to handle themselves and to be growth mindset leaders in those environments. And the way you teach that is by teaching them those strategies that we've pointed to today.
Excellent. I guess in the interest of time, that's all the questions we're going to take for this webinar. Mind you, we do have a few questions that went unanswered, but we will follow up with you directly. Okay, so I don't know if you've heard, but apparently, not apparently, Hallstrom has a course for parents, but I definitely know they have a course for students. So if you're interested in learning a bit more about the growth mindset course offered at Hallstrom Academy, or just Hallstrom Academy in general, the person you want to talk to is Lisa. And you can reach her at lisa@futures.edu, and there's the number where you can call if you wish to speak to her in person. And and of course, if you want to reach Dr. Shinn, you can reach her not only on the phone number listed, but her email address is drshinn@variationpsychology.com. Obviously, we want to thank you both for leading this webinar. Very important topic.